Hi everyone, welcome back to So You Want to Buy a Home. We're joined by a special guest today. This is our buyer.
Which doesn't look well qualified.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that a little bit. So today's episode 6, and we're gonna talk a little bit about offers and negotiating.
This is the moment where all the preparation we've talked about is paid off, comes into play, but making an offer isn't just picking a price, it's strategy, timing, negotiating. So today we're going to talk about those things: how to make a competitive offer, what to include in your offer, how to negotiate like a pro, really. So we'll dive into that and talk about it.
A lot of times buyers, they come and they say, they found the one, but you always got to remind them, liking a house is just the first step.
Yeah.
We still have to secure it. So let's break down what happens when you make an offer.
So the process looks like this. So your first step is we're going to do some homework. So when we meet with you, we can talk about market conditions and a good starting point. Depending on what the market's doing or what market you're buying in, that might look different. So that's really where we start. Once we kind of have a game plan that we've all put together, step number 2 is we're gonna get an offer actually written formally that we can provide to the other side so they can meet with their seller. They're gonna have similar conversations that we have with you. The third step really is you're gonna get a response from the seller. They can do one of 3 things. They can accept your offer, decline your offer, or counter, which is most likely and usually what happens. That plays into that initial conversation we all have. We want to build our initial offer in such a fashion that we get a seller response, but also leaves us room to negotiate with that seller so that you're not paying more than you have to. From there, the 4th step is really just a lot of back and forth, a lot of negotiating. Just as you as our client have certain needs and objectives you want to meet, the seller does as well. So, most offers will have 2 or 3 counter offers before a decision is made on both sides. The 5th step is once the offer is accepted, that's when you open escrow, and that triggers a lot of other time frames and things we'll talk about. But yeah, those are really the 5 steps.
All right, so that's how you build a competitive offer. Having a strong offer is definitely important because, we work both the buy side and the sell side. And when we're on the sell side, we do present every offer that comes in to our sellers, but typically only a handful of them get responses, because they stand out more than the others. So just make sure you're presenting a nice, strong offer.
So let's talk about making a strong offer. Obviously, you're writing offers, working with buyers all the time and whatnot. So I know we wrote out some notes. Maybe we can throw some things on the screen and just kind of go through those bullet points with what makes a strong offer. I'll get the first one out of the way, just because we already talked price a little bit, but price does play a factor, obviously. And that's not always the deciding factor, but just keep in mind that, sometimes what you want to pay and what a home is worth, or sometimes what a seller is asking and what the house is worth, are 2 different things. So a competitive offer is usually one that the seller will accept, but that also meets the value of the home in the current market. That's a starting point, but hit us with some other bullet points.
Yeah, so the next one is a solid earnest money deposit. Bringing a nice little deposit just shows the seller that you're serious.
This can be scary sometimes for buyers. The question we always get is what happens if we fall out? So keep in mind, the way we structure contracts is you have contingencies during your inspection period, the appraisal for loan approval. So your deposit is nice and safe during that time period. And we never allow our clients to get to a point where the deposit's not safe. But what the deposit does, just like Aden was saying for the seller, it shows them you're serious.
One is have minimal contingencies. I can tell you from our experience, when we're on the selling side and we're presenting offers to our buyers, they typically are looking for the ones that, have minimal contingency. The next one is a strong financing package. Sellers love pre-approved buyers with solid financials.
Even taking it one step further, and this is another area where you can really stand out, is having, and this is something we do from the loan side, but we get underwritten approval. So we're not just handing the other side a piece of paper that says, hey, we talked to this person on the phone, they have a job, they have a pulse, they told us they make this much money, here's a pre-qualification letter. We're gonna go through, make sure that there's underwritten approval for you. So when we send your offer out, your qualifications look better than the competing offer.
And the last point is have a flexible closing timeline. You know, if you want to make yourself attractive to the sellers, make your offer look a little better. You know, if they have a strict timeline of when they need to do something, or, you know, maybe they need a little extra time, just be flexible with them. You know, it makes you stand out compared to the other ones.
Yep. And that's something our sellers always respond to really well.
All right, so hopping over to the next section. We just talked a little bit about contingencies in the last one, but we're going to go a little more in depth with it now. A big question that buyers have is what contingencies should they include and which ones should they waive when making an offer to make it seem a little stronger?
Yeah. The important thing to understand is contingencies are there to protect you. Like, when you put a deposit down, your protection against losing that deposit is your contingency. So the three big ones, the inspection, appraisal, and loan contingency, in our opinion, should never be removed. There are some cases where, you know, let's say you're buying your fifth house and you could pay cash and it doesn't matter if there's a loan. Yeah, you might want to waive the loan in that scenario. But in general, you don't want to waive those three. They're there to protect you. I've seen people get really aggressive and remove them. We will always recommend you do not do that, even though it's ultimately up to you. But yeah, I think those three should always be in place.
Definitely. And while some buyers, you know, as you just mentioned, do like to waive contingencies to make their offers more competitive, we always say do not waive your home inspection unless you truly know what you're getting into.
Yeah. Even then, I would say don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still. Let's talk negotiations now. So say your buyer submitted an offer and they get countered. How would you respond if you were the buyer, if you wanted to, you know, stay competitive and stay afloat in the deal?
Yeah, I think to be able to properly negotiate, you have to remain in control. And you can only do that if you have a good plan, which we talked about. But here's a couple of key points that I think are important in negotiating. And the first one is knowing your walkaway point. That can be difficult sometimes when you're caught up in the emotion of negotiating on a house you like. But that is also where buyer remorse can come in, or an uncomfortable payment after closing can come in. And so regardless as to how much you like a house, I think understanding your total monthly payment on that house and what your walkaway point is really important. Being able to offer creative solutions in negotiating, you know, negotiation is a meeting of the minds. It's not the buyer beating up the seller beating up the buyer. You know, agents working to do the best deal they can for their client, but creative solutions go a long way. Again, going back to, can lower timeframes on inspection and appraisal, maybe you can close faster. There's usually other areas where you can give a little, not necessarily financially, but maybe with time. The other thing, and I feel kind of dumb saying this, but staying professional. You'd be blown away at how many agents become really immature in negotiations, and that is not beneficial to anybody. So you'll get a good feel when talking with an agent and interviewing them to represent you, their level of professionalism. But I've had a lot of people melt down when negotiating, and I'm not talking about the buyer or seller, I'm talking about the other agent. It's always interesting. So find an agent that you feel comfortable with, where you feel like they're going to remain professional and help pull a deal together rather than push people apart. And then the last note I made is you have to be patient. I've had deals where we've negotiated for weeks. If you really like a house, don't let that aspect of it bother you on a personal level. You got to kind of keep emotions out of it, remain patient. And again, that's how you remain in control. And I think remaining in control is probably one of the best like tools you have in negotiation. And when that goes away, the wheels start to fall off the bus on all the other areas.
Definitely. Yeah. One more thing I would like to throw in is negotiation does not mean lowballing.
Right.
You know, good negotiations lead to, you know, both the seller and the buyer walking out happy and, you know, getting a fair end of the deal on both sides. You know, that's ultimately what you want in a negotiation. Next, we got an offer accepted. What do we do now?
First thing is opening escrow. So escrow is basically a neutral third party. They help facilitate the closing. From there, we're going to order your inspections. We're going to get your contract to the lender, so the lender can order your appraisal. They can get your file in with the loan processor and the underwriter. So the loan team is essentially working on, even though they have you pre-approved, there's certain things they can't do until there's an actual property under contract. Meanwhile, on our side, we're going to be working through, you know, inspections, negotiating any sort of repairs that might come up that are important to you. From there, after inspections are done, we're going to let the lender kind of finalize loan approval, make sure your loan's all good to go. From there, then we kind of move into preparing to close. So after repairs are done, after appraisal's done, we'll get notified by the seller that basically the house is ready for you to do what's called a final walkthrough. Final walkthrough is basically we go through, we make sure if we negotiated anything that those items are done. And then we also make sure that the home is in the same condition, right? We want to make sure that, you know, if the house was coming with a kitchen, there's still a kitchen. You'd be surprised the things we've seen people take. And after that, really closing. So now the fun part, you know, you get to move. I don't know if loading the moving truck is fun, but yeah, that's kind of the overall process of the life of an escrow.
Basically, in conclusion, even when your offer gets accepted, there's still a lot more work to do. It's not the end.
Lots of paperwork. Lots of paperwork.
All right, well, that's all we got for this video. Basically, in conclusion, making an offer isn't just about picking a number. It's about strategy, negotiation, when to walk away. Yeah, now you know how to write a strong offer and be competitive.
I know we hit you with a lot, and I know there's a lot of time frames, and we mentioned a lot of paperwork. This is the importance of a buyer consultation. I know it might seem tedious to meet in advance and talk about a lot of things that aren't necessarily ready to happen, but I can tell you our clients that meet with us in advance, whether it's a week, a month, 6 months before actually starting the home buying process, there's a lot less stress on their end because we're able to go through and really customize a timeline and everything for you. That way, all these timelines and timeframes and everything we talked about, your mind is at ease. These are not things you have to remember. These are things we will remind you of. But we've done this long enough to know that if you wait until the last second and you're learning all of this as it's happening, it's really stressful. So the best way to get rid of that and ease that stress is to meet with us well in advance so we can tailor a plan to you. Every client likes certain updates differently, or they like the transaction flow to be different. We can work with that. But the only way we can do that is basically by meeting with you and putting together a customized plan. So all that stuff, don't let it stress you out. We have control over it. But you got to reach out to us first.
Drop a comment below. What's your biggest concern about writing an offer? And don't forget to tune in next week. Episode 7, we're going to talk a little bit about closing day and what happens when you get your keys.
Cool. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.